when you create really high quality, interesting content that's tailored to your target audience, shockingly, it works. It blew through all of our KPIs.
The way people consume content has changed.
People are tired of the same boring stuff. What's something that you would actually watch? What's a commercial you would actually watch on TV?
What other strategy is a really notable one that you've seen some good success with?
I have 2 or 3 in mind. Let's talk through them.
Yael, thank you for joining me today. I'm very much looking forward to talking with you about Monday.com. Obviously, within the context, like your all's marketing has been incredible. I mean, the company's been around, I think, for 10, 11, 12 years. And the growth has obviously been massive over that time. And there's a lot of marketing levers you have pulled, but like the focus of our show and obviously the focus, of your role, a lot of it is centered around the content strategies. So what we kind of chat about here is the content strategies that are designed to get in front of the 95% of possible buyers who are not yet necessarily looking for a solution. And so I think it'll be really fun to explore that with you. Maybe to start, if you could just give everybody like a quick overview of your role and what your focus is at Monday.
Sure. So I'm the director of content marketing at Monday. I had the pleasure of joining when there was no content team. So I actually founded the content team. And fast forward 5 years later, we are about 20 content marketers. So really, really exciting growth over that period of time. And my role focuses on, it sounds funny. It's like the answer to your question is yes, right? It's company narrative. It's working with product marketing to position our products. It's our brand campaigns. It's sometimes our communication strategies inside and outside of the company, working with our PR team. So it's really runs the gamut of anything messaging related at the company.
What would you say is there, and I'm sure this is difficult to put maybe a percentage on, but when you look at the overall content strategies that you all are executing, I'm imagining that there certainly is a focus on content for people who are searching for
100%.
a solution like Monday right now. Like you all want to be everywhere where those searches are taking place. But then you've got the other side where it's like, we want to get in front of people before they're actively searching. So is there a way you could kind of give context for what percentages the focuses of those two buckets are?
I would say like it depends on kind of how we look at the teams, but in
Okay.
many ways, I would say it's almost 50-50 if you think about it, because even though, for instance, a lot of the product marketing is focused on people who are already kind of in that buying journey, we often approach mediums like out of home, billboard ads, subway ads for that 95% of people who don't even know who we are, don't know what we sell, and are just kind of going on their way to work, driving their cars, or social media, looking at, just scrolling through their LinkedIn. So I would say it frankly, in many ways breaks down to 50-50, or at least that's the way we try to think about a lot of our content, that people don't always know who we are. They might not even be interested in what we have to sell. And right now it's just about creating value for them.
Amazing. Yeah. So that when, 6 months later, maybe they're using a competitor or something and then they get out of contract and they've already been seeing content that is not necessarily trying to pull them into a buying motion, but it was like educating them or entertaining them or just keeping you all front of mind,
100%.
like that kind of stuff. So yeah, maybe let's go into some of that stuff. I know, from my research, I can name a few things that I think are maybe pulling on those levers, but I'm sure there's many more that you could speak to, and we could go down any of the roads on them. So a few things that maybe are helping to execute that is your Monday Insights series, and then your internal speakers bureau that you have, and you also have an executive ghostwriting program, it sounds like, to me, for sort of internal SMEs, and then your out of home marketing campaigns like you mentioned. So yeah, maybe there's those or more we could explore. Whatever.
We've got so many things. Yeah. That's one of the great things about having a big team is you could do a lot of things. But yeah, I'll dig it. I think Monday Insights is a really good example of some of the stuff we're talking about right now.
Cool.
Monday Insights kind of was born really randomly. I'm sitting in a room with my CEO and he's like, you know what I always read? I'm like, tell me, what do you always read? And he pulls up this, I'm not kidding, it's probably was in like Times New Roman email newsletter, no images, nothing. And it was just like market news. He's like, I always read this. This is always really good. We should do something like this. And it kind of got me thinking a lot about how people, a lot of times the content, we have like this tendency nowadays that everything has to be immaculately designed and perfectly written. And always kind of really like where we're thinking about what we're trying to sell in every single line, rather than sometimes people just want to read interesting stuff that gives them value, that helps them succeed at work. And how can we take some of the insights from a very busy person, our CEO, who doesn't have a lot of time to read something and decides to read something every day? What goes into that mindset? And so Monday Insights, this kind of newsletter about work trends, was born. And a person on my team really took this under her wing and began to really push this newsletter out every single week. And it was before there was the term zero-click content. It was before all of that. It had no links. It was literally like as close as we could within staying within the brand guidelines of Times New Roman text, blocks of text. And what happened was amazing. We got phenomenal open rates. We got like 70%, 80% open rates, unheard of in email marketing. And this is amongst millions of people in our email marketing list. So it was really, really crazy. And what we realized, it was because we were tapping into questions and issues that people were facing at work. One of our top performing newsletters was how to admit mistakes as a manager, how to admit you made a mistake, or how to support working parents on your team. And I think that there was something that tapped into the psyche of people saying, I'm facing these real dilemmas at work. I want to impress my boss. I want to know what's going on. I want to have interesting insights. And I'm going to check this out. And we see that over time, no matter how many more people we add to this list, pulling from different email marketing lists, the open rate stays between 50 to 70%, which is just crazy. And so I think that that's where, one of the examples of just give them value. Don't try to sell them anything. Don't try to force them down some sort of funnel. Don't get them in some sort of nurturing flow. Give them information that will actually help them succeed in their workplace. And then hopefully in a few months from now and a year from now and 2 years from now, when they're thinking about a solution, they might say, oh, what about Monday? I remember I read something really interesting from them.
Yes, I love this. There's a lot we could explore with this topic and this execution. I guess one of my first questions would be around how is the content in that newsletter? How are you all deciding on the topics and like sort of the execution of it on a week-to-week basis in order to keep that open rate as high as you have? Because what that tells me, obviously, is that the content is resonating and people are very actively waiting for it almost. And like when they see that come in their email inbox, even amongst all the other hundreds of other emails they're getting, that open rate sounds like it's staying very high. And that's even more difficult of a challenge the more subscribers you get to it. Because so you said do you know the number of current subscribers you have approximately on that list?
I want to say we have about 3 million. I'm not sure, something around 4 million, something. Yeah, something.
And
like
how
that.
long has it been? How long?
About 2 years.
2 years. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, can you talk to me a little bit about sort of the editorial side of that? Like how are you kind of executing on the content quality?
Sure. I think there's a couple different factors at play. First, when you have a content writer who's writing these every week and has the way that it's sectioned out is the first section is around work news and trends. So this person is naturally staying on top of the pulse of all sorts of kind of what's going on in the world of work. What are people talking about, not wanting to go in on, the Sunday scaries? Are they talking about that or not? What's going on in around women and equality in the workplace, or diversity and inclusion in the workplace? All of these are hot topics that people are talking about every day. And so what she did and what we try to do is, one, look at that, stay on top of it, but then also consult and interview managers at the company. So one of the things we made sure to do was to talk to other managers. What are you facing? What are some of the things that were really difficult for you as a manager when you have change management or when you're needing to do something with your team? what worked well for you? And I think those are the things that help the content stay, one, fresh, but two, also be actually very insightful. Because as managers, or when you're working with other people, the best examples come from people who are dealing with something very similar to what you're dealing with. And so I think that's part of it. The other side was also adding kind of funny, I call them like winks in the newsletter. We have a trivia question that people like to, find out what the answer is. We got a cartoonist that does these kind of like highbrow work cartoons that you can easily share with people, things like that. And I think doing those kind of things help people kind of look forward to it. Maybe they want to know what the trivia question was, or they really liked the cartoon last week and they want to share that. Or maybe they really like the section where we give kind of real advice and tips for people. So I think thinking about that and thinking about like, what would you, one of the things we're always talking about on the team, what would you actually like to consume?
Right.
Like what's actually interesting to you? And so that's kind of the way we approach the editorial quality.
So it sounds like the execution of this was dedicated to sort of one person on the team. Obviously, there's more people probably involved in just the overall strategy, but like the actual week to week, writing of it, was that their
one person? Or sometimes we would play around with freelancers. Sometimes we would have two people write. Some people we would play around with it a little bit, but for the most part, I find that having one person who owns something really helps kind of keep your eye on the pulse.
Agreed. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And was that their sole responsibility, or did they also have other things that they were focused on inside of their role?
They had other things.
Yeah.
We don't have many things at Monday where somebody's doing just one thing.
Okay.
So we demand a lot of our content marketers. So they do a lot. They wear a lot of hats. They juggle a lot of things. So for instance, in this case, our email marketing, this person also happened to handle most of our email marketing for the company. On other projects, whether you're talking about our speaker bureau or our podcast, they're usually running 4 or 5 different programs at the same time. So there's a lot, they've got a heavy list.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them are probably interconnected as well. So doing some work on one of them, like the podcast, for example, there maybe is some material from that can also be repurposed elsewhere and things like that.
Definitely.
How did you approach subscriber acquisition for that newsletter? Going to 3 million subscribers over, a couple years. And I'd imagine you maybe had a base to start with, maybe with some opt-ins previously or things like that. So yeah, I'm curious.
That's exactly what we did. Was we looked at people who actually were not engaging with our email marketing. So people who were just completely disengaged. And we had them opt into it after I think we sent them 1 or 2 trials, and then said, if you want to hear more about this, opt in. And I think that's how we started to build it. To be frank, though, I don't think that we've actually actively pursued subscribers. I mean, we mostly use our current email marketing lists.
Okay. Yep. So they were getting, sort of product related email marketing. And if they weren't necessarily engaging, then it's like, oh, this is maybe the 95% audience.
Exactly.
They're just not quite ready, but we need to keep them active in our world. Right. And this is a good tool for that. Okay. Amazing. And then last question on the newsletter side. This is probably very relevant for the other strategies amongst this as well, which is, how do you think about the measuring of success of a program like this?
So it's really hard. It's really, really, really hard. And it's something that we're dealing with constantly. I think when you deal with programs that are made to kind of move something in people's minds, it becomes really hard to measure the impact. The way I like to look at it is I like to look at things like brand awareness. So looking at brand awareness surveys, are we seeing increase in brand lifts? Are we seeing more people that know who we are? We also do a lot of kind of, when we do, I call it squishy content in some ways. It's content that's like not hard, with hard measurements around it. A lot of times what we also do is we do kind of surveys of readership or surveys of customers, or we ask them questions. We jump on a Zoom with them and start to ask them kind of qualitative questions of, do you find this valuable? How many times are you engaging with this, et cetera? We've been able to get some good insights from there around how we are kind of shifting that mindset within our customers or our potential customers.
And do you look at those on a per program basis? Like this is the newsletter strategy versus the executive ghostwriting, or do you kind of put all of those in one bucket? And when you're doing those surveys, like all of those are feeding that the brand lift in general. Like how do you know which one to
So we
prioritize
keep
over others? Yeah.
we keep it more siloed
Okay.
to a certain extent because it makes it much easier to understand the impact of each one. The brand attribution or the brand surveys at a larger level, obviously we can't attribute it to
Yeah.
an email marketing campaign versus a billboard campaign.
Yep.
But we do try to keep it siloed, at least on the content quality and at least in terms of internal kind of alignment and understanding. And the way that we kind of then prioritize is I like say, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like how many people are we actually impacting? So something like an email newsletter that reaches millions of people versus if we're looking at like a LinkedIn strategy where there we can measure kind of follower increases for our executives and things like that. Try to understand where are we moving the needle. I think with some content pieces, it's much easier. When you have something like email open rates, it's super easy to say, okay, we know that this many people are engaging with the brand, and therefore this is how we think it might be affecting, other metrics. But when you're talking about things like, for instance, even some of the LinkedIn activities that we're doing outside of, let's say, the executive program, it becomes really hard. Yeah. Even when you do have follower counts and things like that.
Yeah, it definitely is a difficult challenge. And especially with a TAM as large as Mondays, one of the things that I try to look at with this is like, what percentage of our TAM is actively consuming our content on a weekly or monthly basis? And the higher that percentage goes up,
smart,
the better. So it's essentially our audience TAM, which maps to our overall company TAM. But still, connecting the dot between like that and then like inbound or sign up, that's where there also is this notion of like vanity metrics a lot lately. And I'm not sure if that's an appropriate way to look at it, because to your point, it's like the open rates and maybe the click-through rates, if there are any sort of like, here's like the reference to this news source in your newsletter or something like that. Like the engagement metrics, I don't think those are vanity. I think those give you good directional insights around like, are people resonating with the content? Same thing with impressions on LinkedIn, and follower growth on LinkedIn. I think those are all sort of leading indicators that like, okay, this content strategy is working.
Right. I think when you have, hard MQL to SQL to opportunity, et cetera, like amazing. I will take that all day, every day. Right. But we don't have that all the time. And we shouldn't, frankly. I mean, that's the trap, right? You start saying, no, everything's got to lead to an opportunity. When really, like you said, 95% of people aren't ready to buy right now.
Yes.
And so I think that's where, we do our best. Some of them might be more effective than others, but the only thing we can do is get some direction, get some, some sort of indication as to whether this is actually making a difference in people's lives along in concert with the target audience we're trying to reach.
100%. And how do you go about those surveys? Would you mind sharing a little bit about, just getting either more of the quantitative or qualitative feedback on, those, the ways that the tools that you have that you are kind of trying to measure that directionally?
Sure. So we'll do a couple things. Sometimes we'll send out an email survey and then, we'll just ask a few questions like that. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll, randomly pick a few people that we see engaging with the content and say, hey, do you want to jump on a quick call? We'd love to talk with you. And honestly, usually people jump at the chance. They're really excited to speak to it. And then as much as possible, we just ask questions like, what's your favorite part of the newsletter? Or, the survey people are going to kill me for saying that. We ask it in some sort of scientifically sound way. Who knows exactly how we say it. But we ask as much as we can. And we try to do it also when we launch kind of new initiatives, as much user testing as possible. So if we can, we even use UX research tools to understand, do people like certain banners more? Do they like certain formats more? Things like that. So that's some of the way we test and kind of gauge what's working and what isn't.
I always find those qualitative phone calls to be so valuable.
Yes, for
Like,
sure.
so some people write them off because it's not necessarily like statistically sound. Like it's hard to scale that to the
Hmm.
number to get like a statistical, relevant number and what have you. But even just like 5 calls or 10 calls or 15 calls, just going through, like, usually it's like the question gets asked, they give an answer, but then the follow-up question I find
Hmm.
to that answer, where it goes one level deeper, usually gets really great insights on what they like, what they don't, areas we could improve, all of that kind of stuff. And I think that's a great approach, doing those.
Definitely. The other thing that we like to do is we put on gong trackers. So if a salesperson happens to mention a commercial, an out of home campaign, something like that, then also sometimes they'll mention something like that. And we can also pull out some interesting insights from there too.
A big believer in that as well. Cause yeah, it's hard on the sign up flow. It's kind of sometimes hard to
Right.
actually capture that up as a part of the actual flow. But then, yeah, in those conversations, it very often can come up at a higher frequency.
Exactly.
But you all are doing this is kind of the challenge with you all having so many great marketing levers being pulled, that like you're kind of everywhere, like you're omnipresent. So it's like, which one was the actual thing that,
Speaking my language.
drove the result?
Was it the 100 blog posts we wrote? Was it the 16 social posts about this? Was it? No, we're definitely we are definitely a fast moving but also like very volume driven team. We've got a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, and they all work together. I mean, that's the thing. It's like it's not necessarily always one thing. Somebody could see the YouTube ad, but also
Exactly.
be on the newsletter, and so
100%.
they play together.
And then they get on the subway and they see our ad.
Yeah, exactly. Monday Insights. I love that. What do you think would be a next good one to go through? Like the social sort of executive ghostwriting, or like, yeah, what would you consider another like main pillar strategy here for this kind of stuff?
We could talk about I think the executive ghostwriting is an interesting one. We can start with that and then see what you think afterwards.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, how are you approaching that? It sounds to me like, is that being done internally? Like internal content team members are helping support the SMEs and their executive social presence? Or yeah, how are you kind of, because one of the challenges with this is the executives are very busy. And
Hmm.
so they've got domain expertise and a lot of thoughts that they want to share. But what we have seen sometimes is that it's hard to, number one, like get their time. And then number two, when stuff is getting created, even in a way that is coming from their own words, they aren't necessarily always comfortable with like how it was written. So they want to revise it. And then that's like a bottleneck to the whole process. So those are just like little detail things. But yeah, I'm curious how
Sure.
you all like work
So
on that
what we
stuff.
do is we kind of have two aspects of our ghostwriting programs. We have one that's for the executives and one that's for kind of our directors and leaders at the company. And we have two different approaches exactly based on what you just described.
Mm.
For the executives, we started with one and we're expanding to more. We do a mixture of freelance and in-house. So it's really what I've found with executives, the number one thing is the vibe.
Mm.
Does this person understand the way this person thinks?
Yep.
Do they understand how they want to write? Is the executive easy to write for or difficult to write for? And all of those things need to come together. So we have some executives, like you said, that pour over every single word. And then you have to have that content writer who has that good relationship with them where they can hammer it out in half an hour in a room and they're done.
Yep.
But there are some executives that are more like, whatever, I just need to know that my ideas are represented in a coherent way. And it's like more like a check mark. And so I think it's really about one, understanding the executive, and two, understanding their vibe. Now, for some of our leaders that are outside of the C-suite team, what we do is we have like a little ecosystem that we've developed for them. So we've got a content writer. We've also got a communications professional that assists them. We've got a video person. We've got a social person. And they have kind of this ecosystem of people that they can check in with and who kind of hold them accountable, because that's the other challenge, is actually getting them to post.
Yeah.
So we take kind of two levers. Some are in-house, some are freelance, but it's really like whether it's freelance or in-house, you've just got to find the right connection with that executive.
Very smart. Yeah. That Is there a way that you assess that on, like, let's say you're adding a new executive into the
Yeah.
program or something? Yeah. How do you kind of actually approach like pairing them with the right person?
Wow. This is like, I'm not a psychologist,
Yeah,
but
this
there's like a whole, like, there's a whole thing. I think it's about a couple things. I think first, you yourself, when you're thinking about assigning your team members to work for an executive, you need to think about a few things. The first is, this is kind of like, pardon my French, your ass on the line.
Mm,
Okay. Because you want to make sure that you're giving somebody who's really responsible on top of it and knows how to write well and can also tolerate a fair bit of uncertainty. So
yep.
you've got that part of it. But you've also got to understand that executive's tone and style. And we all know we have got some writers on the team that are a bit more formal. They're a bit more, let's say, polished in the way that they write things. They're a little less casual. They might not throw jokes aside. They might not have as good of a sense of humor. That's not the person you want to pair with, like the creative genius that wants to throw some ideas around and then hash it out in a room. So it's a lot about thinking about, what is that personality type?
Mm,
What kind of personality type does the executive respond to? But also the writing style. Which writers are really good at that kind of creative, interesting, I'm going to find this weird tidbit and write for it, and which are a little bit more polished. And then you start to match them up. The way I like to look at it is, I try to like really think about what kind of person will become invaluable for this executive. A lot of times it's really amazing to see that sometimes they're like, no, I really need this person to help me now write my presentations. I
mm,
need them to help me write my next ghostwritten article on Forbes or Fortune, et cetera.
mm,
And so that's kind of the way I approach it. I'm really thinking about like the psychology of it, like who is
mm.
going to get along well, but also to make sure that the writing style kind of matches the tone and style of the person that they're going to be writing for.
That is a great sort of like data point on the feedback loop to look for, which is like, does
Mm-hmm.
the executive, it's working if the executive is proactively pulling them into like more, or just
Exactly.
trying to have them help enable them even more.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's a
I
great
think the other thing is, like, some people really like to be challenged. So some executives in my experience, prior to this, I worked with a lot of different, C-suite executives. Some need that person that's going to give them that
Yep,
that controversial take or push back. And
yep,
they need that. They like it. It's important for them. Some people more need, like, look, I know what I want to say. I need you to help me figure out how to say it in the right way. And
yep,
so that's also part of it, is which team members have more experience pushing back, who feel comfortable in that space. A lot of people
yep.
don't when they're dealing with another executive. So I think it's about kind of understanding all those different factors at play. And then, like you said, looking for the feedback loop. Is this person pulling this person in? Do we see good results in the follower count?
Yep.
Our news reporters reaching out to these
Mm,
executives more to want to feature them? Are they getting invites to podcasts? All that kind of
mm.
stuff helps kind of create those data points for this squishy content.
Yeah, who would have thought we would need like personality assessments in
One,
like content strategy? But yeah,
right.
it's very true, because that's the foundation of the success. And so then, yeah, speaking of like, so success, like follower count, getting those inbound opportunities, stuff like that. Yeah, maybe could you quantify how much output is being generated on a whatever time frame, weekly, monthly basis between this whole
Sure.
program? And yeah, what sort of success, metrics do you look at for this, or what have you found as some unlocks that this has helped achieve?
Sure. So it's really early. So I'll give you
Okay.
that caveat. It's only been going on for about 2 months.
Okay.
We try to aim for between 1 to 2 posts a week, depending on
Per executive.
per executive or per leader.
Yeah.
Now, some are more comfortable with that. Some are less comfortable with that, believe it or not. Some just, it's too much. Sometimes it's too little. We have some people who have
Yeah.
already some significant followings on LinkedIn, and they want to do more. And what we're looking at follower count and engagement, but really we're looking at whether they're getting inbound opportunities, whether they're getting, whether it's, like we said, news reporters reaching out, or our hope is that eventually we will start seeing some inbound opportunities for our sales teams, for
Yep.
our sales executives that are on there, that with people who are interested in kind of trying out the platform.
Yep.
That's our hope. Still too early to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And how many people are in that program right now?
So we've got a cohort of 8 right now, and
Sure.
in addition to 2 or 3 executives that we're working with. I say 2 or 3 because some are in like different parts of our kind of journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really powerful effect, I think, is like 1 or 2 people doing this is nice. But then like when you get up to like 8, 9, 10, it's like it's a multiplier effect on this.
Exactly.
Because again, it's like anytime somebody opens up LinkedIn, if there are 8 to 10 people at Monday doing this strategy, it's very likely or probable that they will see somebody from Monday's post in their feed.
Exactly.
So again, it's not even necessarily about that one individual's, performance. It's the collection of it together
100%.
and the aggregate of it. What other strategy do you think is a really notable one that you've been excited about or that you've seen some good success with?
I have 2 or 3 in mind. Let's talk through them and see which one we want to talk about. We have got one which was actually started out as like an acquisition campaign. It was like a true acquisition campaign, but it was created for sales leaders to create like real value for them. Like it was a content series that we called The Bottom Line.
Mhm.
Amazing results. Sales marketing handoff fumbled. Okay, so that's one. And so there's some interesting lessons there. The second is our podcast that we just launched. Honestly, it's just been a really grueling process more than anything. So I'm not sure. We haven't seen really great success for it, but it's probably more about like one of those, you got to keep doing this until you see results. And we just launched a big survey on the world of work. And we kind of surveyed, I think it was something like 3,000 people on work trends and kind of chopped it up into different pieces. And we saw some really good PR success from that. And so whichever one of those you think could be most compelling to your audience, or all of them, or something else.
Yeah, let's start with The Bottom Line. That sounds really interesting. So what form did that series take place in? Like, was that a video series or?
It was a video series.
Yeah.
So what it was a video series aimed at sales leaders. And it was kind of created. One of the cool things we do at Monday is we have an in-house creative team. And a lot of the people come from television. So they actually really know how to create great content and great also production. And they're, even on a shoestring budget, it's amazing what they're able to do. And so it was a content series with sales executives and sales leaders, like a roundtable discussion where they talk about all sorts of, pain points and what they're dealing with as sales teams, et cetera. It consisted of kind of, I think it was a 5-part series. You could get the first, episode for free. And then if you wanted to get more, you had to sign up, and you were put into a very short kind of nurturing flow. So yes, it was kind of this 95% content because it was created with a lot of value, but it did have a kind of real bottom line aspect to it.
And was that published on like a dedicated landing page essentially? And then how did you get people to that? Did you funnel?
So we promoted it through LinkedIn.
Okay. Paid or organic?
Both. So we did a little bit of both.
Yep. And what sort of results, like how did you look at the results of that?
So we looked at a few things. One, we looked at like the view rate and how much content they consumed. So we looked at how much people were consuming the content, how much people were engaging also in the nurturing flow afterwards, how many of the people that were engaging our content were part of our target audience. And what was amazing is that it blew through all of our KPIs. I mean, it was in terms of the views, in terms of the engagement and the content. I mean, the number of opportunities generated all blew through all of those. It was really amazing to see that when you create really high quality, interesting content that's tailored to your target audience, shockingly, it works. So it was a really great proof of concept in that way.
Yeah, that's a really difficult task too, to have the majority of the series behind the opt-in. And so the promise of that series must have been very high and compelling for
And I
the
think it also
target
gave
audience?
value at the very beginning. So we didn't just like give them a couple snippets and gated it. We actually
Yeah.
gave them like really high quality content, kind
Yep.
of the content where you say to yourself, oh my gosh, I want to hear more. I'm really interested in this, because I hate gated content in general. And I think that you need to kind of partially gate things. You need to give people an idea of what they want. And then if they really want it, they'll sign up for it. And so that's the approach we took.
And so that almost sounds like it was a 5-part, because there was only 5 parts to that series, right? So it's almost like a course. Like, was that, could you consider it that way? Almost like an educational based course or something like that? Like based
Kind
on
of. Well,
with the lessons you were teaching in it?
it was more like sharing, like if you think about it, it was like a long conversation that was cut up into 5 pieces where they talk about
Mm,
different parts of being, a sales leader and what does that mean, and they make a lot of funny inside jokes about their CRM and things like that. So I don't know that I would consider it like an educational series, but it was like a TV series almost.
yes.
It was really like with this idea of like,
Yep.
I'm going to create something that's entertaining and interesting for people to listen to, and I want to hear more about it.
I'm really bullish on this concept of TV series, not necessarily having to think of it as like the full production
Right.
execution needed of like a Netflix show or anything, but more and more, especially now, like people are watching YouTube channels in their living room on their big screen TV, with whatever podcasts or channels
Right.
they like or what have you. And it's like we definitely have the opportunity in B2B to create a series or a show that is the one on the living room TV for our ICP, our market, our industry. And
Totally.
and it doesn't necessarily, we don't, I think sometimes podcast can feel like a limiting term in terms of like maybe what we feel like that has to be. I think there's a lot of creativity that, we could execute with that. Like, for example, this was a 5-part series you did, and the first episode was freely available. The 4 episodes were behind the opt-in, and it was incredibly successful. And there's like a million variations of that you could do.
I think that's absolutely right. And I also think that, like, if we think about TV series or anything that we consume on a personal level, we always think that we've got to make this separation. No, 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 no. We talk about state of mind. You're not in the state of mind to purchase software. So therefore, you need to really think about, okay, we have to create something that's for LinkedIn, for when people are thinking about software. I don't know whenever you last thought about software. It doesn't happen. And I think if you just think, we talked about this like a little bit. I'm always saying, just say it. Say it in the way that you want to hear it. Say it in the way that you would want to consume it. If I, as a marketing director, want to hear more about marketing, what's the format that's going to be interesting to me? And I think so often we lose sight of that. And we're like, no, we've got to create an ebook. We've got to create a white paper. We've got to create this content that's really boring, like a Wikipedia article with or now like ChatGPT, that has nothing interesting or unique in it. And you're not going to want to consume that. So why are you creating it? And I think that's the same idea as a TV show. What's going to be interesting to you as a viewer? Is it going to be interesting to you to hear me waxing poetic on the future is now here and now we've got to talk about marketing? No, you're going to tune into a couple marketing or sales directors that you really like admire and think are really interesting, joking about their CRM and sharing memes. Like, that's probably what you're going to consume.
Yes. Yeah. The more the content can feel like it is similar to the other content on that platform, the higher chance it'll have it being successful. Like the way people consume content has changed on YouTube. If we can create content that is in show or series format, like other content they would watch just in their personal downtime, but we put our own spin on it and it's got a through line to the company. Like, that's really where I think success can be had. So,
and I think also, like, that's where we saw with our latest commercial with our llamas. I don't know if you saw the latest Monday.com commercial.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of principle. Like, people are tired of the same boring stuff. What's something that you would actually watch? What's a commercial you would actually watch on TV? Oh, it has llamas. Therefore, it's a little bit more interesting to you. So I think it's the same kind of principles.
Absolutely. I think mascots and things like that are going to make a comeback. I think.
I 100% agree. If Salesforce can do it, anybody else can do it.
Awesome. Those are great. Thank you for taking us through those.
Of course.
And yeah, I guess what I would say here, just kind of wrapping up a couple final questions.
Sure.
So sometimes content teams want to be able to do these kinds of things, but the connection between the business result, like I firmly believe the business result is there for these things, but the connection between seeing it from like a digital touch point attribution standpoint, or seeing it actually appear in the analytics, there's not necessarily clicks. Like you said,
Right.
zero click content these days. Like that's how people consume in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you recommend for other content teams or leaders to try to be able to take the step in a vision they have that they really believe will be successful, but maybe they're in a position where the executive team or the leadership team they're working with, they're just not they're not used to this type of thing yet?
So I think a lot of times our like content marketing directors, the number one mistake I see them making is that they're scared of numbers. So they're like, I know how to write. The numbers aren't for me. I can't measure my content. And what you need to do is you need to build trust. I didn't get to the ability to start creating fluffy, squishy, 95% content overnight. I first had to show business results. So I started with SEO, and we started to show how in SEO, we're focused on getting those top results. And then I moved on to product marketing, and we showed how, guess what? If we are able to nail the messaging on this page, you're going to be able to see more signups. And then when we came to IPO, I worked on the business section, and I wrote the business section for our IPO. And we saw that the IPO was successful. I'm not saying that because I wrote the business section, the IPO was successful, obviously. But when people start to understand and trust that you're not just an artist and you're not doing these things because it's fun and interesting and creative, empowers you in different ways, they understand that you're actually focused on business impact. It makes that executive team much more likely to give you the reins to do something else. And so I would say, I said to a team member the other day, listen, you've got to learn how to use these analytical tools. If you don't know how to use them and you don't know how to present them, people aren't going to understand that you know the numbers. They're not going to understand that you understand that what you're doing is driving some sort of business impact. After you get to that point, you can start to find other ways, like we talked about these kind of open rates and follower counts and things like that. But if you don't know how to show that other parts of your work is actually driving business impact, they're not going to give you the keys. They're not going to say, go ahead and drive. You need to first show that. And I find that a lot of people are scared of it. They don't want to get into it. But unless you show that, it's going to be a really hard uphill battle. So I say first show trust, then show what you want to do, and then back your way as much as possible into showing some sort of success through that, and set really strong KPIs, show them that you're measuring the impact. Like you said, think about the data loops and the feedback loops that you want to be seeing. And as much as you can, try to measure it.
Super smart. I absolutely agree with that. And the whole point of all of this is to drive business results. And so sometimes the executive is probably thinking, if you cannot point to how this is improving the business results, then are you hiding behind the strategy that is maybe a good strategy, but you don't necessarily want to be held accountable to how it's how it's driving business results. And that's not, I'm not saying that is always the case, or even the case in general, because these things are hard to attribute in some cases. But like you said, getting those wins on the board in whatever way, shape, or form you can first, and then showing that shows everybody, like, everything we're doing at this department is for this result.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. Awesome. And then last question. So are there any experiments you're thinking about for the future, or like new formats or new ideas, just with the context of like the stuff we've talked about today, that you're kind of interested in or excited about?
So I'm going to sound really old, but I'm interested more in like print and like
I love that.
actual like physical pieces of content.
Love that.
We produced at our customer conference last year, we produced a book. We took all the Monday Insights editorial pieces and we put them into a book, and we call them like lessons from Monday.
Love that.
And it was a hit. because people aren't used to that anymore.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm always talking about is like, I wish we could create a board game to learn, that's all about work dilemmas or things like that. I think these are the types of funny, viral
Yeah.
things that make you remember a brand, because I think that at a certain point, especially with what we see around AI tools, we're going to be so flooded with digital content. And it's about creating, I joke about this, like couture content, the idea of like every word being crafted, every idea being fully developed, like really trying to dig in and think, what are the things that are going to resonate with my audience and how can I stand out? So it sounds really like I was like, let's write a magazine. Like, let's pick the most dead content medium that exists. Let's do that. Like those kind of things is where I'm always trying to think like, how can I do something that actually will make people raise an eyebrow and say, oh, I didn't expect to get something in the mail from Monday, but maybe I should be paying attention.
I love that. It's almost like fashion, anything like things that were trendy 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
Exactly.
Like, let's bring those back because it stands out. It's unique. Like
Exactly.
the whole point here is to create something that is differentiated from what everybody else is doing. So if we're following the best practices of today, by definition, that means everybody else is following those as well.
Exactly.
So,
and so with as much as we can without destroying too many trees, right? Like what are ways that we can actually do something that feels a little different to people?
Awesome. I love that. Well, we will be on the lookout for that. And the board game sounds really cool.
I'm like, it's like a dream of mine at one point to create a board game.
Monetizing that could be actually a really nice revenue line item for Monday
exactly.
as well.
The Monday.com board game.
Yeah. Awesome. Yael. Well, thank you so much for spending some time today. And where would you recommend, if anybody wants to just kind of follow along the strategies you're doing, where would you recommend people to follow you, connect with you, and things like that?
So check me out on LinkedIn, and would love it if you listen to our podcast, The Stand Up, where I'm the host.
Love it. Awesome. Everybody go check that out. And thanks again. This was great.
Awesome. Amazing.